Super Rugby Round 8 Saturday games. There are 4 games this Saturday. New Zealand, Australia, New Zealand, Australia. Australian Conference clash, I guess. Japan, Australia, and South African Conference clash, I guess, with the Jaguares thrown in there. So, yeah, a kind of good mix-up. No traditional derby matches, although, like I said, a couple of those are kind of direct conference rival matchups. So, yeah, a fair bit to play for. There's one game that kind of particularly looks a bit lopsided, but other than that, they all look to be pretty competitive. I will start with lopsided because the Crusaders hosting the Brumbies. I don't mean this as a bit of disrespect to the Brumbies, but I thought the Hurricanes might give the Crusaders a run for their money last week when the Crusaders were away. And now they're at home. So this one has got the looks of pretty one-sided all over it. The Crusaders are 5 wins, just the 1 loss, and that 1 cancelled game counting as a draw. The Brumbies are 2 wins and 4 losses, so their record, despite a couple of glimpses of actually looking legit, for the most part has been found a bit wanting. So yeah, the lineups have been shifted around a wee bit kind of accordingly as well, although there's a bit of stability in that Crusaders backline. You still got Havili, who was really good last week at fullback. Interestingly, the Israel Dag has retired from rugby. I guess injuries caught up on him, so that's a pity for Crusaders fans, but he has been struggling for a wee while. So some guys, it just gets to that point where medical advisors call it quits. So he's called it quits. Good career for him, Super Rugby title, World Cup, so yeah, top player. But yeah, Havili is the man for fullback. Jordan's still there, Bateman, Crotty, Sever Reese is in on the wing. Richie Mwanga still starting at 10. Mitchell Drummond gets the nod ahead of Bryn Hall at number 9. Kieran Reid's back at 8, despite the fact that it looked like he might be gonna. Well, he picked up a knock last week and it seemed like he might be out, but he's good to go, so that's good news for All Blacks and for Crusaders fans. Ethan Blackadder gets a start. Owen Franks is back. Joe Moody is back. It's not looking good for the Brumbies, just when you look at that lineup. How much experience is there with the likes of Franks, Reid? I mean, even Moody is kind of a bit of a veteran at this point, so yeah, the Brumbies have kind of, I suppose, taken a bit of a, this is a tough game to win. Maybe it's not the best game to be throwing all our best players at, because when you look at the guys out, and there are varying reasons why they're out, but there's no Scotty Seo, no Folau Fainga, no Rory Arnold, no David Pocock, so a lot of their big name kind of Wallaby players are missing, and this is not the first time that a team this season has taken an understrength lineup to Christchurch. The Hurricanes did it, and now it's the Brumbies, so that might become a thing. I've noticed it in some of the other competitions. I can notice it a bit in the Pro 14, that a lot of teams send a weakened side away. It's not that much of a thing in Super Rugby that I've ever really noticed, but that could become a bit of a habit, that teams just say, going to Christchurch, just save you guys for the next round. Perhaps part of that's because it's a World Cup year, and if you do have to rest players due to their international commitments, an away trip to Christchurch is perhaps a good time to do it, rather than trying to achieve the next to impossible. So yeah, it is just a bit of an interesting one. For the Brumbies, who is in though, I mean, Josh Manray is going to be starting at number 2. Tony Pulu is back. He's had issues with injury this year. Kurandrani's still playing. Spate's still playing. Tom Banks, Liliafano, Powell. So it's not like an absolute B team. It's just a lot of their big guns are not there. McCaffrey's been good. Pete Samu returns to Christchurch. That'll be an interesting one for him to be facing the Crusaders instead of playing for them. But yeah, the Crusaders are predicted to win by 24 points according to the bookies, and I looked that up last night, so it could actually be even more by now. But yeah, it's predicted to be a pretty tough one. In the next one, the Blues against the Waratahs. I'll be going to this one. Remember, if you are in Auckland, go to this game because it's the free potato game. So one of the Blues sponsors is a potato company, and at the end of the game, they give you free potatoes. A sack of, usually it's a 5 kg sack of spuds. So if there was no better reason to go to the Blues game, make it the sack of spuds. It's worth it. Two teams with kind of interesting records, both 3 wins and 3 losses. The Waratahs pretty disappointing in that loss to the Sunwolves at home. The Blues season can literally be split in half with the 3 losses to start and then 3 wins on the bounce. So apparently they're in good form. I'm not used to this as a Blues fan, but the Blues are on a winning streak and they'll be looking to continue that. Rieko Ioane, they were thinking about resting him, but he's still playing. So he's been in the form of his life. I think he's, what they say, 7 tries in like 3 games. So he is on a very good hot streak, and Leon McDonald, the Blues coach, is looking to continue that against the Waratahs. So he's not being rested. The All Blacks players are required to sit out, it's top line All Blacks, 2 games this season, and it's not including buys, and they're not allowed to play more than 6 games in a row. The Blues have been lucky in that they've had a bye to separate, so that kind of 6-game clock gets reset for Rieko. But by playing him now, essentially it means at some point down the track the Blues aren't going to be able to play him. But I figure they're on a hot streak, so they want to keep it going, and he has been their main strike weapon. So he's on the left wing. Caleb Clark comes into the right wing with Telea being suspended from last week. Josh Goodhue's back in the second row, but otherwise the lineup is pretty much stable from last week. Teddy Black, TJ Faiane, Ma'anonu, Malani Nanai, Akira Ioane, Blake Gibson, all these guys are still in the team from last week. No Sonny Bill Williams, though, I guess is one of the changes because I think he's picked up a knock. The Waratahs, now they have shifted their lineup a wee bit, and they've been kind of accused of fielding a weakened team because there's no Michael Hooper for this one. I think he's required also to have a bit of a rest for the Wallabies, so their captain is not playing. Will Miller comes in for him. They've also dropped Kurtley Beale to the bench, and Daryl Gibson's saying he's not been dropped. He's just looked at the size of guys like Ma'anonu and TJ Faiane and saying he perhaps needs to bulk up his midfield and make sure it's defensively sound. So he's gone with Carmichael Hunt at 12 and Adam Ashley Cooper at 13 to try and contain that Blues midfield. An interesting mindset there for the Waratahs. Bernard Foley is back this week at 10 because Mac Mason didn't have his best effort against the Sunwolves, so I guess that'll bring a bit of stability. But other than that, I think the side is fairly settled. Believe it or not, the Blues are actually a favourite by more than a try. It's by 8 points is what the bookies are saying. So, yeah, we'll see if they can kind of live up to this billing because they are actually getting a bit of billing, which is a pretty rare occurrence if you're a Blues fan. And, yeah, don't forget about those spuds. You'll see me at the game, after the game with a sack of spuds. The next one is the Rebels hosting the Sunwolves. The Rebels are another one whose season kind of fits into segments because they're pretty good in Australia, but pretty bad out of Australia. So they lost their 2 games in South Africa, but everything else has been winning ways for the Rebels. So 4 wins, 2 losses. Kind of staking a claim for top spot in the Aussie Conference, especially with the Waratahs slipping up last week, the Reds losing last week, Sunwolves with 5 losses is a pretty poor record at the moment, despite those 2 wins. And the Brumbies not doing the business either. So it is all there for the Rebels to keep charging on, put the pressure on the Waratahs as well, because, yeah, they're away to the Blues. The Rebels at home to the Sunwolves, you would feel like is a game they'll be targeting as a must-win. But hey, man, the Sunwolves could be on a bit of a confident run after their win over the Waratahs. So, you never know what they're going to do. In terms of the lineups, the Rebels have pretty much stuck with their same starting 15, except for Jermaine Ainsley coming in at tight head, and I believe that was kind of, was it injury or sickness enforced? So Dave Vessels is not taking the Sunwolves lightly. He's not saying, right, Sunwolves coming to town, I'm going to switch up 7 of my players, give some of the other guys a run. Nope. He's still playing Guinea, he's still playing Cooper, still Nasarani. Luke Jones has been really good this season. Billy Mixon, English, Maddox, Hodge, all these, a lot of them Wallaby players will be there. He wants to win. I guess he sees these other teams' results like the rest of us see them, and there is definitely a chance to to go that one game ahead of everybody else. They're already a game ahead, but to go 2 games ahead of the Waratahs potentially, and yeah, just really get some distance out there, because it was the tail end of the last season where they kind of fell off. Perhaps if they create a big enough buffer this season, they'll be able to hang on for that playoff spot, potentially even get top of the Aussie Conference. So yeah, plenty to play for. The Sunwolves have made a few changes. So Hendrik Tui has moved to 8 from 6. Ben Gunter has come in. Luke Thompson's come in. Mark Abbott's come in. So a few changes. Hilu and Hatting dropped from the second row to the bench. So especially Hilu will definitely add a lot from the bench, because he's an impact player. Whether he starts or he finishes, he's going to add an impact while he's there, but he generally doesn't do the 80 from what I've seen. Masarewa, who scored that hat-trick against the Tars, is still there. Hayden Parker, who is just kicking phenomenally well, is still there, so he will be there to punish any mistakes the Rebels make, and they have been guilty at times of conceding too many penalties in games. The back lineup is, yeah, from 9 to 15, I think it's the same lineup as last week. It's just a few changes in the forwards. But despite all that, the Rebels are still 15-point favourites for that one. So I guess punters not giving the Sunwolves that much chance of kind of repeating their heroics against the Tars. Or perhaps the Rebels just are the better team this season in the Aussie Conference. I guess we will see. And the last one is the Jaguares away to the Bulls. Reverse records, so the Bulls 4 wins, 2 losses, the Jaguares 2 wins, 4 losses, and those 2 wins for the Jaguares feel like quite a long time ago now. So they've lost in South Africa, they've lost back at home to the Chiefs, they've had a bye in that time as well, so it's been quite some time since we've seen the Jaguares get a win. The Bulls, it's them and the Lions at the moment, same records. But yeah, neither team has looked quite the finished article. I suppose if you're a Bulls fan, you look at this as a game to really keep staking that claim to try and knock their rivals off that top spot, because you know the Bulls and Lions aren't that far from each other geographically, so I'm sure they would like nothing else than to really kind of knock them off that top spot in South Africa, where the Lions have been for a few years. Lineups, the Bulls, interestingly, have taken this chance to rest a couple of players. So Jesse Creel's being rested, Andre Pollard is being rested, so perhaps take this into account in your Super Brew. They are bringing in guys like Mani Libok, who's good. Jade Stickling is there on the left wing. Dylan Sage is in at 13 for Creel. Johnny Kotza is on the right wing. Yeah, Cornel Ells is in for the suspended Skulk Brits. But other than that, the forward pack is pretty much the same. It's still Vermeulen, still Steenkamp, Eli Snyman, Trevor Nyakane. So still pretty familiar names there for the Bulls. In theory, I think they should be too good for the Jaguares, who are really poor in South Africa. Somebody mentioned in the comments the other day that they've never won in South Africa against the current teams. So they've beaten the Cheetahs and the Kings previously, but they've never won in South Africa against those teams remaining in Super Rugby. So I thought that was a really interesting stat. For the Jaguares, Montoya still gets the start at hooker ahead of Krevy, who's on the bench. Petty is in the second row with Kramer this week, so Lavanini's on the bench. Matera's at 6, Lozana's at 7, and Decio is at 8. For the backs, interestingly, Gonzalez Iglesias is at 10. So they are not playing Bonija. I'm not sure if he's injured or if he's just being rested at 10. Mojano's there at 11 though, so that's good. He's a very slick player. Boffelli's there at fullback. De La Fuente still captain from 12. So it's not like it's a bad looking team, but for some reason they just can't find their form in South Africa. So maybe it's one of those ones like when the Aussies had their drought against Kiwi teams, or the Blues had their drought against Kiwi teams. They just need to kind of get that one game to get that monkey off the back, that kind of mental block. But yeah, figure it's got to happen sometime. Just like me updating that Jaguares magnet to the current logo. It's got to happen sometime. Maybe I'll wait until the Jaguares get an away win in South Africa and then I'll update the magnet. Could be waiting a while. You guys let me know your thoughts on that one, because the bookies have got the Bulls by 6 points. So picking it to be relatively tight, but still Bulls pretty good favourites. What do you guys think of these games? Who are you picking for these in your Super Brew? I've made my picks. Interesting with the teams resting players, like the Brumbies, like the Bulls, the Blues not going that route, the Tars changing things up. So it is kind of getting to that interesting point of the competition where they are having to play that kind of long-term game. But yeah, you guys let me know how these games you think are going to go, and I will talk to you again soon. See you later.